Have you ever wondered why your deepest desires feel so real, almost as if they're memories instead of dreams? What if the things you long for aren't waiting in some distant future, but are alive in another version of you right now? Neville Goddard's teachings confront us with this radical idea. You're not chasing anything, you're remembering. This is why the endless waiting game feels so heavy, because waiting assumes you don't have it, but the law of assumption turns everything upside down. It shows that creation is finished, and imagination isn't daydreaming, it's access. The life you want is already printed in the pages of your being. And here's the paradox. The more you look for proof, the further away it seems. But the moment you assume the wish fulfilled, something shifts. You stop reaching and you start being. That's when the mirror of reality bends, not because you forced it, but because you chose it. So if you've ever felt tired of waiting, of praying with doubt, of chasing signs outside yourself, this message is for you. Because the truth is shocking, yet freeing. Everything you want exists in a version of you already living it. And the door has been open all along. He always thought his desires were dreams for tomorrow, like markers on a faraway road. But Neville Goddard teachings reveal something deeper. A desire isn't about the future. It's a snapshot of another version of you, already alive and breathing in a parallel reality. When the heart longs, it's not inventing, it's remembering. That quiet whisper is proof. Everything you want exists right now. Think about it. No one longs for what cannot exist. You don't crave wings to fly because your human form doesn't carry that potential, but you do crave freedom, love, abundance, and recognition, because those states are real, eternally present. Desire itself is evidence that creation is finished. It's like catching a glimpse of a movie that's already been filmed. You've just tuned in late to the showing. Imagine someone who feels trapped in a small apartment. They daydream about living in a spacious home with sunlight pouring in. That longing isn't fantasy. It's their consciousness brushing against the alternate self who already enjoys that life. The law of assumption tells us that desire is not an empty ache. It's the bridge revealing, you already are this, step closer. It's almost like déjà vu. Have you ever walked into a room for the first time and felt you'd been there before? Desire works the same way. The sensation of wanting is the faint echo of living it elsewhere in consciousness. And when you catch that echo, you realize you're not chasing something outside of you. You're aligning with what your spirit already knows to be true. Society tells us to set goals and work hard. But those who deeply study Neville Goddard teachings know a secret. Goals are shadows, not origins. The real origin is the inner vision, the snapshot you glimpse when your heart says, I want this. Imagination creates reality, because it's not imagining something unreal. It's remembering a scene from the eternal archive of self. Think of desire as a photo album. Every page holds an image of you living in a different state. When one image shines brighter and calls to you, that's the snapshot you're meant to step into. You don't have to become it. You only need to assume the wish fulfilled and live in the end, because that picture is already painted in your consciousness. A man might desire financial freedom not because he's desperate, but because that freedom is part of his spiritual DNA. It already exists as an alternate self. When he stops doubting and starts feeling as though he is that man, he bridges the gap instantly. Conscious creation isn't effort, it's alignment. Feeling is the secret that awakens the snapshot into living color. Have you noticed how children imagine with no resistance? A girl puts on a crown and instantly becomes a queen. She doesn't ask, how long will it take? That's the essence of the law of assumption. Stepping into the version of you where the desire is normal. Desire shows you the costume. Imagination lets you wear it fully here and now. The world often confuses desire with lack, but Neville reminds us, the moment you feel a desire, you've touched the state where it's already fulfilled. It's not absence, it's presence. Another version of you has it, is living it, breathing it, enjoying it. The question is, will you keep looking at the photo from a distance, or will you step inside the frame? So the next time desire stirs in your chest, pause. Instead of sighing, one day, recognize it as a breadcrumb from your higher self. It's a personal postcard from the universe saying, come home. Every desire is not a future, it's an awakening. And once you see it this way, you're ready to discover why Neville taught that all states are eternal. Neville Goddard insisted on something that completely reshapes how we see life. All states already exist. Nothing needs to be created from scratch. When a desire arises, you're not inventing a fantasy. You're awakening to a self that has always been alive. What we call wanting is really the call of consciousness to return to another version of you already living that reality. Think of it like a grand theater stage. Every play is already written, every set already built. You don't need to construct the play of love, prosperity, or healing. You simply step into the play that's been running all along. That's the essence of the law of assumption. You don't create, you assume. And in assuming, you awaken. Picture a radio dial. The stations don't appear because you turned the knob. They've always been broadcasting. Turning the dial just reveals the frequency that was there all along. Consciousness works the same way. Each desire corresponds to a frequency, an alternate self already living it. By tuning in, you're not creating. You're discovering what's already playing. This is what Neville Goddard called conscious creation. It feels like creating, but in truth it's revelation. It looks like the future, but it's always now. The life you seek isn't far away. It's paused, waiting for you to press play. Everything you want exists, and your desire is simply proof. It's the quiet reminder. You've lived this in spirit already. That's why trying to force change in the outer world feels so exhausting. Those who think they must build everything end up drained. But those who understand creation is finished live with a lightness. The task isn't to construct the staircase, but to step onto the first stair of the self who already stands at the top. Remember that feeling of déjà vu when you meet someone new, yet feel like you've known them forever? That's how states work. You don't create abundance, you recognize it. You don't create love, you remember it. You don't invent healing, you awaken to it. Recognition is the real spiritual awakening, the moment you see what was always there. And this awakening doesn't require force, it's quiet, almost effortless. One simple act of assuming the wish fulfilled instantly aligns you with the eternal state. The mind may wrestle, but the heart knows. Imagination creates reality because it's the bridge, the doorway into this infinite field of selves. Every desire is simply your invitation to walk through. The beauty of this truth is that it removes all pressure of time. You are not late. You haven't missed anything. What's yours is not lost. It's alive, waiting. Another version of you is already enjoying it, right now. And the only task is to switch theaters, to walk into the scene already being played. This also dissolves the question of doubt. It's never, will it happen? It already has. You're not pulling something into existence. You're waking up to what is. The power of assumption is nothing more than remembering yourself, and once remembered, the wait ends, because there is no waiting for what already exists. Seeing desire this way reveals there is no lack, only choice. You choose which version of yourself to embody, and the moment that choice is internalized, the world faithfully reflects it. It cannot be otherwise. If all states are eternal, the only danger left is thinking in terms of someday, and that's where the next lesson begins. Most people live in the illusion of one day. They say, one day I'll be free, one day I'll be wealthy, one day I'll find love. But that thought keeps them locked outside their own inheritance. Neville Goddard teachings make it clear. Thinking in terms of someday pushes the desire away. The truth of manifestation is that it already exists now. Your task is to assume it. Picture standing outside a glass house. Inside, you see a table set with food, warmth, and laughter. But instead of walking in, you stand outside saying, one day I'll enter. That's how most treat their desires. The law of assumption tells you that the door is already open. One day is a trick of the mind. Assumption is the key that steps you inside. Creation is finished. Everything you want exists right now. But the mind has been trained to believe in time, trained to think life is linear, that fulfillment is down the road. This conditioning is why people feel stuck. Yet when you dare to live in the end, you bypass time entirely. You stop chasing tomorrow and embody the alternate self who already has it today. Think of a reader holding a novel. Page 300 already exists, even if you're stuck on page 50. If you insist, one day I'll get there, you forget that the ending is already printed. Imagination creates reality because it allows you to flip ahead, to taste the conclusion now. Waiting makes you a spectator. Assuming makes you the author stepping into the scene. This is why so many people pray with hope instead of conviction. Hope says, one day it might happen. Conviction says, it is already mine. Neville taught that living as if keeps you outside, but living in the end brings it home. Feeling is the secret, because once you feel it here and now, the state fuses with your identity. Let's use a simple analogy. Imagine planting a seed but never watering it because you keep saying, "One day this will be a tree." The seed already carries the full tree inside. Your assumption is the water. The moment you live as though the tree is inevitable, you've shifted into the version of yourself where the fruit already exists. This is the difference between thinking of your desire and thinking from it. To think of is to keep it separate, in the distance. To think from is to occupy it now, to walk as the self who already enjoys it. One day keeps you hungry, now keeps you full, and the mirror of reality only reflects the state you occupy, not the one you admire. Have you ever noticed how children play? They don't say, "One day I'll be a superhero." They simply put on the cape and become one instantly. That's conscious creation in its purest form, assuming the wish fulfilled without delay. Adults complicate it with time and doubt, but the law of assumption whispers, "Play the role now and the world adjusts." The danger of one day is that it never arrives. Tomorrow is always tomorrow. That's why Neville Goddard's teachings press us to claim it now, not later. The alternate self already living your dream doesn't wait. It simply is. And the moment you identify with that self, the outer world begins to echo your choice. So the question becomes, will you keep postponing your life, or will you step into the house that's already prepared? Everything you want exists in this very moment. And once you realize that, the next mistake becomes clear, trying to force change in the outer world instead of shifting the state within. The common mistake people make is trying to bend the outer world into shape. They hustle, they push, they chase results, believing change happens out there. But Neville Goddard teachings show us the truth. Reality is only a mirror. The world doesn't respond to effort. It reflects the state you've silently consented to within. It's like standing in front of a mirror and frowning at your reflection, hoping it will smile back. You can wait forever. It won't happen. But the moment you shift your own expression, the reflection changes instantly. That's the law of assumption in action. Outer reality is powerless without your inner agreement. Creation is finished, and the mirror only shows the state you occupy. Think of someone constantly struggling to earn more money. They change jobs, start side hustles, chase opportunities, but the same financial frustrations follow them. Why? Because they're still living from the state of lack. The alternate self who enjoys abundance already exists, but until they assume that version, the outer chase only repeats the inner belief. This is why Neville often said, "Stop trying to change the world. It is only yourself you can change." Conscious creation isn't about manipulating circumstances. It's about embodying the self who already lives the desire. Once the state changes, the mirror of reality has no choice but to shift accordingly. Everything you want exists now, but you must consent to it. Have you noticed how relationships play out the same patterns over and over? A person may change partners, but the same issues keep surfacing. That's because they haven't shifted the inner state. The outside world only recycles the assumption held within. Feeling is the secret. When you feel differently about yourself, others must play their parts differently too. This principle is easy to see in everyday life. Imagine someone walking into a room feeling shy and invisible. People respond with indifference. The same person walks in with quiet confidence, and suddenly others notice them, smile, and engage. Nothing in the world changed, but the state within shifted, and reality simply mirrored back. It's tempting to think that hard work or force is the answer, but how many people exhaust themselves only to stay stuck in the same loop? The truth is, outer action without inner shift is like rearranging furniture in a dream. Until you wake up inside the state, the dream will always reset to match your inner assumption. So when frustration rises, the question isn't, "Why isn't it working?" but "What state am I still consenting to?" Neville Goddard teachings remind us that conscious creation is alignment, not effort. The world has no power to resist you. It only has power to reflect you. And once you step into the wish fulfilled, the reflection must obey. That's why spiritual awakening isn't about chasing outcomes, but about remembering your authority within. The old self fights to control circumstances. The awakened self simply chooses a new state. Another version of you already lives in peace, prosperity, and fulfillment. Your task isn't to drag it into being, it's to wear it like a garment. And once you see that reality is just a mirror, the next step becomes clear. To access the version of you that already has it, you must build a short, imaginal scene that makes the desire feel natural, complete, and alive in the present. To access the version of yourself already living the desire, you don't need complicated rituals. Neville Goddard taught that a single imaginal scene, kept short and simple, is enough. The key is to create a moment that implies the wish is fulfilled, something so ordinary it feels natural. Imagination creates reality when the scene becomes more real to you than the world outside. Think of it like a snapshot from a life you already live. If you desire love, imagine a casual evening where your partner hands you a cup of tea and you smile with gratitude. If it's financial freedom, imagine checking your phone and calmly seeing the balance you wanted. The scene doesn't need fireworks, it needs normality. That's how the subconscious accepts it as truth. Many people overcomplicate this step, building long fantasies that exhaust the mind. But Neville emphasized brevity. A short scene, repeated with feeling, works far more powerfully than a drawn-out story. Why? Because the subconscious mind thrives on simplicity and implication. When you assume the wish fulfilled in a single act, the alternate self becomes tangible. It's like watching a trailer instead of the whole movie. A 2-minute preview tells you everything. You instantly feel what the full film is about. In the same way, a tiny imaginal act captures the essence of your desire. And because creation is finished, you're not building something new, you're aligning with what already exists. Let's use an analogy. Imagine wanting to be congratulated for a promotion. Instead of dreaming through months of office politics, simply imagine a trusted friend shaking your hand and saying, "I'm so proud of you." Feel the warmth, hear the tone, see their smile. That one moment implies the entire journey is already complete. The law of assumption is about planting impressions, not forcing details. The world takes care of the how. Your job is only to feel the end. That's why Neville's students found so much success with short imaginal acts, because they carried the essence, not the mechanics. One drop of assumption is enough to ripple through the ocean of reality. This is also why it's important to engage your senses. Smell the tea, hear the laughter, feel the handshake, notice the softness of the couch. The more alive the scene feels, the more your subconscious records it as memory rather than fantasy. And once recorded, the mirror of reality has no choice but to project it outward. Some resist this because it feels too simple. But remember, children live this principle every day. A cardboard box becomes a castle because they see it so vividly. They don't ask, "Will this work?" They simply know. Spiritual awakening is a return to that natural imagination, where belief and play merge seamlessly. The beauty of this practice is that it requires no time, no tools, no approval. You can close your eyes for 30 seconds and enter the state of the alternate self. The imaginal scene becomes a doorway, and stepping through it places you in alignment with the version of you where everything you want exists now. And once you step into that scene, the real magic begins, because the feeling it generates is the true activator. Relief, gratitude, quiet joy. These emotions are the evidence that you've touched the self who already has it. And that takes us directly into the next truth. Feeling is the activator. Without feeling, an imaginal scene is just empty theater, a mental sketch with no life in it. Neville Goddard's teachings show us that it is the emotional tone, relief, gratitude, quiet joy, that signals you've stepped into the state of the wish fulfilled. Feeling is the secret, because it's the bridge between thought and reality. Think about relief for a moment. When you truly feel relief, it's because something has already happened. That's why Neville said to live in the end. The moment you feel the sigh of completion in your body, you've joined the version of you who already has it. The outer world may not have caught up yet, but within, the manifestation truth is sealed. Gratitude works the same way. Real gratitude never comes from waiting. It flows from knowing you already received. When you give thanks in advance, not as hope but as certainty, you activate the alternate self. Everything you want exists right now, and gratitude is your way of saying, "I see it, I have it, it's mine." Quiet joy is another sign. Not excitement that comes and goes, but a steady warmth, a calm knowing, like slipping into a familiar home where you belong. That is how the wish fulfilled feels. The law of assumption doesn't need fireworks. It needs naturalness. The more ordinary your joy feels, the deeper the state has taken root. Let's use an everyday example. Imagine someone longing for financial ease. They might close their eyes and see a bank statement, but if they feel anxious while imagining, nothing shifts. The key is to touch the relief of "it's done," that little inner smile, that relaxed breath. That's proof they've contacted the self already living it. This is why Neville said imagination creates reality, not just because of images, but because of the emotion that fuses with them. The subconscious doesn't respond to words, it responds to feeling. A scene of celebration without joy is empty, but a single second of true gratitude imprints more powerfully than hours of mental rehearsal. Think of it like seasoning food. The ingredients might be there, but without flavor, the dish is flat. Feeling is the seasoning that transforms imagination into reality. Conscious creation requires that you not only see the desire, but taste its emotional essence. That essence is what convinces the subconscious you already are that self. This is also why people often sabotage themselves. They imagine a scene but then check for results, slipping into doubt. Doubt carries its own feeling, and the world reflects it faithfully. Spiritual awakening means realizing you are always broadcasting a state. The question is, are you broadcasting completion or longing? Notice how your body responds. Does the scene leave you tense or relaxed? Do you feel joy or fear? The body doesn't lie. When you touch the true feeling, your shoulders drop, your breath deepens, your mind quiets. That's the evidence. You don't need to wait for signs outside. The feeling itself is the sign. And yet, the old state will try to resurface. Doubts, memories, and fears will return. But Neville Goddard's wisdom shows us that persistence doesn't mean effort. It means remembering, I am not becoming, I am returning to who I already am. Persistence is one of the most misunderstood parts of Neville Goddard's teachings. People think it means straining, repeating affirmations endlessly, or forcing belief. But real persistence is simple. It's remembering. Each time the old state resurfaces, you quietly remind yourself, I'm not trying to become, I'm returning to who I already am. That's the essence of the law of assumption. Think of it like waking up from a dream. You may slip back into sleep, but when you remember you're dreaming, the whole experience changes. The old state is just that, a dream you no longer consent to. Conscious creation means choosing again and again to occupy the self that already lives your desire. Persistence is not struggle, it's gentle correction. Imagine someone who has decided to live in the end of abundance. They feel the relief, the gratitude. Then an old bill arrives and panic whispers, see, nothing has changed. At that moment, persistence isn't about denying the bill, it's about denying the panic. It's choosing to return to the alternate self who knows, everything I want exists now. This is why Neville said you are free to choose but not free to avoid the consequences of your choice. The outer world reflects your inner state, but you can always shift back. Each return strengthens the new identity. Over time, the old state loses power, like a shadow fading under the rising sun. Think of persistence like training a muscle. At first, it feels weak, and the old patterns pull hard. But every time you return to the new state, you build strength. The power of assumption grows until it becomes your natural posture. And just like the gym, results show not from one heavy effort, but from quiet repetition. Many people quit too soon because they expect instant outer proof. But Neville warned against looking for signs. When you persist inwardly, the outer must eventually conform, because imagination creates reality. The world has no choice but to mirror the self you continue to return to, even when the senses scream otherwise. Consider a sailor steering a ship. Waves may push it off course, but small adjustments keep it moving toward its destination. That's persistence, not fighting the sea but calmly correcting the wheel. Spiritual awakening is realizing that every doubt is just a wave, and you always hold the wheel. Persistence also brings peace. Instead of battling circumstances, you realize your only work is inner alignment. You no longer panic when old states appear. You simply say, that's not me anymore, and shift back. The more often you do this, the faster the old dissolves. Reality bends to the self you choose most consistently. This is why persistence is so powerful. It transforms assumption from a fleeting moment into a stable identity. The alternate self becomes the only self, and the world must obey. And as you persist, you start noticing subtle confirmations, ideas, synchronicities, gentle nudges that show the desire is already normal. And that leads directly into the next stage of the journey, recognizing the early signs that the shift is working, not by force, but by the quiet naturalness of life adjusting to your new state. When you persist in a new state, life begins to whisper back to you. At first, the signs are subtle, tiny shifts that feel almost ordinary. Neville Goddard taught that these early hints are the natural unfolding of assumption. They aren't proofs to chase, but gentle confirmations that you've touched the version of yourself already living the desire. You might notice new ideas bubbling up, thoughts you never had before. For example, someone living in lack may suddenly imagine a creative project that excites them, something aligned with abundance. That thought isn't random. It's the consciousness of the alternate self bleeding into awareness. Imagination creates reality, and ideas are the first ripples of change. Then there are synchronicities. A book falls into your lap, a conversation sparks at the right moment, or you stumble on exactly the message you needed. Many dismiss these as coincidences, but Neville called them bridges of incident. They are the threads reality weaves to carry you from the old state to the new. Everything you want exists, and these moments are reminders. One of the most telling signs is a calm sense that the desire feels natural instead of distant. You stop asking when and start living as if. The longing dissolves, replaced by quiet knowing. This is what it means to live in the end. The wish fulfilled no longer feels like a dream, it feels like home. Imagine a woman desiring love. At first, she aches with loneliness, but as she assumes the state of being cherished, something shifts. She notices herself smiling more, dressing with joy, and feeling at ease. Soon, compliments appear, doors open, conversations flow. The world simply reflects her inner decision to embody love now. Neville Goddard teachings emphasize that these early signs are not to be idolized, but embraced. Too many people chase them as if they are the goal, but the goal is the state itself. The signs are only echoes, evidence that the mirror of reality is beginning to adjust. The real treasure is the inner calm that arises. This is why conscious creation feels like alignment rather than effort. You aren't pushing reality to change, you're noticing how it bends on its own once you shift inside. The more natural it feels, the stronger the reflection becomes. Feeling is the secret, and naturalness is the measure of success. It's like planting a seed. At first, nothing seems to happen. Then small sprouts break the soil, almost unnoticeable unless you look closely. Those sprouts aren't the full tree, but they prove the tree already exists in potential. In the same way, new ideas, synchronicities, and calm are sprouts of your new state unfolding. And as these signs build, something profound happens. You stop being surprised. What once felt extraordinary becomes ordinary. That is the real evidence of embodiment. When your desire feels so natural that you forget to wonder about it. The alternate self is no longer alternate. It's simply you. From here, the journey deepens. True embodiment means living as the new version without checking for results, allowing it to feel ordinary instead of extraordinary. And that's where the next lesson unfolds. Deep embodiment is the stage where you no longer check the mirror to see if the world has changed. You simply live as the version of you who already has what they want. Neville Goddard's teachings show us that the true power of assumption lies in normality. When the wish fulfilled feels ordinary, not extraordinary, you know you've become it. Most people stumble here. They imagine their desire as something so huge, so distant, that when it comes into awareness it feels almost unreal. But the alternate self doesn't see it as spectacular. To them it's just life. Everything you want exists, but the real shift happens when you stop treating it as a miracle and start treating it as natural. It's like moving into a new home. At first, every detail feels exciting, the new kitchen, the view, the smell of fresh paint. But weeks later, it becomes the backdrop of daily life. That's embodiment. You don't lose appreciation, you gain familiarity. The extraordinary becomes ordinary, and that's exactly what convinces the subconscious it is truly yours. Think of love. At first, being cherished feels exhilarating, almost unbelievable, but in deep embodiment, it becomes as natural as breathing. You don't question if you're loved, you know it. That calm certainty is the state Neville described, living in the end. It's not about emotional highs, it's about quiet stability. This is why some people sabotage themselves. They crave constant signs, constant highs, constant fireworks. But manifestation truth isn't about addiction to proof, it's about identity. Conscious creation means being so grounded in your new self that you no longer ask, where is it? You live it, and the world has no choice but to conform. An analogy. Imagine learning to ride a bike. At first, every movement feels shaky, but once it clicks, you don't keep checking if you're balanced, you just ride. Deep embodiment is like that. You stop wobbling between states. You ride smoothly as the self who already owns the reality you once longed for. This naturalness also explains why results often appear when you've stopped looking. You've embodied the wish so completely that it no longer feels separate. That's when the mirror reflects it fully, because there's no gap between who you are inside and what shows outside. The power of assumption has become effortless. Neville Goddard said, "Imagination creates reality, but imagination only works when you identify with it. Playing with scenes is the start. Living from them is the completion." When your desire stops feeling like a goal and starts feeling like your baseline, the world must catch up. It can do nothing else. Spiritual awakening is realizing that the ordinary is sacred. You don't need constant validation. You simply live as the self you chose, and reality bends to match. That's the quiet mastery Neville pointed to, not chasing signs, but resting in being. And once embodiment is stable, the final revelation unfolds. Everything you want is already alive in you now. Shift fully into that version, and the world will faithfully mirror your choice. Everything you want is alive in you now. Not tomorrow, not someday. Now. Neville Goddard's teachings make this truth unavoidable. Creation is finished. Every possible state exists, and another version of you is already living the life you dream of. The only question is, will you align with it through assumption or keep waiting as if it's outside of you? This realization is both liberating and humbling. It means you are not lacking, you are choosing. Conscious creation is the art of choice, not effort. Every time you assume the wish fulfilled, you step into a new state, and the moment you consent to it within, the outer world must obey. Imagination creates reality because it directs the choice of self. Think of life as a vast wardrobe. Each outfit is a version of you. Wealthy, free, loved, healed, fulfilled. When desire arises, it's simply a reminder that the garment is already hanging there. You don't sew it, you put it on. And once you wear it, reality treats you as if you've always been dressed that way. This is the heart of spiritual awakening, the discovery that nothing is missing. The world doesn't give you what you want. It mirrors who you are being. When you shift your inner state, you don't chase the reflection. You let it appear naturally. The mirror has no power to resist you. It only reflects your chosen identity. Imagine a person who longed for freedom. At first, they thought freedom meant fighting circumstances, saving money, waiting years. But when they embodied the self who already lived in freedom, everything reorganized. Ideas, people, and opportunities appeared. The shift wasn't in the world, it was in them, and the world mirrored their choice. Neville Goddard called this the law of assumption because it requires nothing more than assumption. Not force, not time, not effort. Just the willingness to live as the version of yourself who already has it. Everything you want exists, and by feeling it real, you awaken the self already living it. This is why chasing results feels so exhausting. The old self runs in circles, waiting for signs, hoping for proof. The awakened self smiles quietly, knowing the end is secure. To live in the end is to drop the burden of time and rest in identity. The alternate self isn't future, it's present, waiting for you to consent. The greatest paradox is that the moment you stop waiting, the world begins to move. When you embody the desire, life has no choice but to echo it. It may unfold in ways your mind couldn't predict, but it will unfold because it already exists. Manifestation truth is this simple. Be it now and the mirror must comply. So what does this mean for you? It means that every longing, every ache is an invitation to remember. You're not striving to become, you're returning to who you already are. The state is eternal, the self is alive, and assumption is the bridge. Everything you want exists, and your only task is to live it. And with this understanding, the journey doesn't end, it deepens. Because the moment you realize the world is your mirror, you'll begin to live with new eyes. Eyes that no longer ask when, but instead say with quiet certainty, I am. You've seen now that desire isn't about waiting for the future. It's a reminder of who you already are. Every state exists, every version of you is alive, and assumption is the bridge. The question is no longer, will it happen? But, which self am I choosing to be today? So pause and ask yourself, what version of me have I been living from? The one still hoping and doubting, or the one calmly dwelling in the wish fulfilled? This reflection alone can transform how you move through the world. Neville Goddard's teachings aren't theory, they're practice. They ask you to stop begging reality and start embodying truth. Creation is finished, and imagination creates reality. The power is already in you. Now it's your turn. Step into the self who already has it. and watch the mirror of life respond. If this message resonated with you, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because every week we dive deeper into the law of assumption, conscious creation, and the art of living in the end. Your shift begins now. Are you ready to choose it?